This is a history of Western thought, number 14, Aristotle's Metaphysics. Even if someone is not particularly familiar with the world or history of philosophy, they've likely heard of the three great Greek philosophers of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And so today we look at the third of these great philosophers that defines classical philosophical thought in the Western world. Aristotle was born in 384 BC in northern Greece. At the age of 17, he went to attend Plato's academy to learn from the great philosopher, and he would quickly become Plato's greatest and most influential student. And Aristotle spent about 20 years there, both as a student and then later as a teacher. And after some time away, he came back to the city of Athens to teach at the Lyceum, where he himself had a school and students, just as Plato did with him. Now, the majority of Aristotle's writings that we have were likely lectures that were given to his students, and so they are a bit difficult to read, more so than Plato's dialogues, as they weren't really written as literature in the same way that Plato's works were. Now, we've also lost quite a significant portion of Aristotle's writings, so it is likely that he had quite a few other things to say in a more purposefully literary framework. But what we have, nonetheless, is a series of books that are likely compilations of things that he taught at his academy at the Lyceum. Now, Aristotle has a profound influence on the development of philosophy in the era immediately following, but largely also in the later medieval period when Aristotle becomes a really significant figure for the development of scholastic theology and philosophy through St. Thomas Aquinas and other thinkers after that. So to understand Western thought, we really do need to grasp Aristotle just as much as we do his teacher Plato. Now, Aristotle and Plato had a lot of areas of similarity, a lot of areas of overlap. And now, as we remember, we discussed how the earliest Greek philosophers were dealing with questions of being. And Plato, as a solution to these questions of being, dealing with the questions of change and constancy in the world, or the one and the many, came up with the notion of the form. So there is this realm of immaterial ideas that transcends physical reality. So physical reality that we encounter in the particular objects of everyday life are a reflection of and a participation in that which is truly real, or the realm of ideas. Aristotle affirmed certain aspects of Plato's approach to the forms, but also rejected other aspects of his view of the forms. Like Plato, Aristotle believed that there were essences that things actually had, that our everyday experiences were more than just encounters with totally separated things. He recognized, for example, that when we encounter a certain type of animal, say a cat, that when I encounter one particular cat and I encounter another particular cat, there is something that unites them. They share a similar essence of catness. However, Aristotle was not convinced that Plato was correct in placing reality solely in this transcendent or ideal world of the forms. Rather, Aristotle believed that the form, or the ideal of a thing, the essence of what a thing is, actually dwelt here, downward, on this earth, in the particular objects themselves. So Aristotle believed that Plato took the separation of the idea or the ideal and the particular physical things too far. And so Aristotle would say, yes, there is an essence of catness, but that essence of what a cat is not some kind of idea far off somewhere else. Instead, the essence of what a cat is exists in each individual cat. These convictions are under the broader terminology of realism. So realism being the idea that the essences are actually real, they really do exist. Now, Aristotle's is a more moderate realism because he believes that the real things exist, but they exist within things. Plato's form of realism is a strong realism because he acknowledges that the reality exists within the ideal, or what is also known as idealism. that the true reality is found in the realm of ideas rather than the physical material world. Now, Aristotle has some particular distinctions then that he's going to develop to formulate his own unique approach to metaphysics. Metaphysics being a broad name for the kind of the first things of philosophy, the primary basic ideas about reality. Aristotle's approach to reality is sometimes given the label hylomorphism. Hylomorphism comes from two words, one being the word hule, meaning matter, and the other being morphe, or form. So we get hylomorphism, or matter and formism, as we might say in English. This idea says that all things that exist are composite. They're composed of these two different realities. We have matter on the one hand, and what matter is what a thing is made up of. We use the term matter, of course, today scientifically to refer to the physical stuff that makes up any given object. Now, Aristotle does use the term in that sense, so he can talk, for example, about a table, the matter of the table being wood. But at other points, he does use the term matter a little more broadly than just talking about physical things. So he can talk about the matter that makes up a word being syllables, or we might say letters. So it's not necessarily a physical thing, but whatever it is, it's the stuff that makes a thing up. Now, the form, as Aristotle has it, is something very similar to what Plato talks about with forms. So the form is the essence of what a thing is. Or when we're speaking about the relationship between matter and form, we could say that the form is the way in which that matter comes together to create a specific object. So if we take the example of a desk, the matter that makes up the desk is wood. The form of the thing is the shape of the desk. So we identify it as a desk because of the particular shape that it has, and then the function that it serves as a result of the shape that it has and the stuff that is needed to put it together, or the matter and the form together. So for Aristotle, when we're talking about any given object in the created world, these objects are a combination of then matter and form. Let's take one example of this that Aristotle uses, and that is the definition of a human. How do we know what a human person is? Now, Aristotle does have the famous definition of humanity as a rational animal, and we'll talk about that as we move on a little bit later. But for now, think about the nature of the soul and the body. What is the relationship between the soul and the body? This is a question that's going to guide philosophers' discussions for many centuries and is still a prominent field of philosophical inquiry today. Aristotle would solve the relationship between body and soul through the framework of hylomorphism. And so Aristotle would say that the body is the matter. That's what makes the person up. That's what we are made of. We have this physical composition that is the body. However, he would also say that the soul is the form of the body, meaning that the essence of really what we are, our essence, is in our souls. However, that is connected intimately with the body so that there is a relationship between body and soul that both avoids a purely materialistic approach that says that we are nothing more than a physical body without any meaning or purpose, but also avoids the errors of a strict dualistic approach which says that the body is some kind of prison for the soul. So you see then how this hylomorphic approach solves a lot of dilemmas that people had in the ancient world, as well as a lot of questions that people still continue to have today. And a second really important distinction that we're going to be discussing in Aristotle's philosophy, and particularly in his metaphysics, answers the question that we've addressed many times already. We've seen how many philosophers try to deal with this question, and that is, how do we explain the realities of change and constancy? How do we recognize that things can retain their identity in the world while at the same time experiencing change, and sometimes change in rather profound ways? And we saw how Plato answers this question by saying that there is something that is ideal, that is static, that is unchanging about reality, and that is the realm of ideas. And so the particulars that share in the ideas we change and shift as we move throughout life, as objects get damaged, as people grow, as animals grow, but they retain their essence or their similarity, their unchanging aspect of who they are, in that they participate in the forms. Well, Aristotle has a little bit of a different way of dealing with this dilemma. Another distinction, then, that comes from this student of Plato is that between substance and accident. Now, that which is substantial is the essence of a thing. So I could say that me, myself, as a human being, I have the essence of human. I could say that I have the essence of maleness as well. That is my sex. And those things are not things that can change. And so the essence of who I am is something that remains the same. Now, Aristotle recognizes, of course, that there are things about the person that change. So I could get a haircut. My fingernails could grow longer. I could get in some bad accident and lose one of my arms. I looked a lot different as an infant than I do now, and I will look a lot different 50 years from now if I'm still around. But amidst all of those changes, my essence remains the same. And so for Aristotle, there's a distinction between our essence and then what he calls accidental qualities. So the accidental qualities are things that the essence participates in and shares in, but they can shift and change with time. And we can distinguish between various kinds of accidental properties, and Aristotle does this in a number of different ways. We could talk about the color of a thing, the size of a thing, the location of a thing, and these are all accidental. So these are the qualities that if they change, they do not change the essence of a thing. Now, if an essential quality is to change, that is essentially to say that the thing has now become a totally different object altogether. But if an accidental quality changes, the essence still remains the same. And so that doesn't mean that accidental change is not significant change, but it is to say that this is one way in which we can categorize our experiences and the things that we perceive and encounter in our everyday experiences that answers that question of why is it that we see things as both constant and we see them as changing. Another way to deal with the question of both change and constancy is to say that the same matter can also become a different form. So we see this largely with non-living objects. For example, take the wood that is pieced together that makes the form of the desk that I described earlier. One could theoretically take that same matter, that same wood, and take apart the desk and then restructure it so that the same wood was now in the shape of a chair. If that's happened, then we see that the matter is consistent, the matter has stayed the same, but it has also changed forms. So we see then that we can speak both about accidental change and the essence remaining the same, or we can speak about change and constancy as a consistency of matter, but change in the form or the shape of that matter. Now, this is all just a basic intro to some of the primary ideas that Aristotle uses to formulate his approach to reality. In the next episode, we will be continuing looking at Aristotle's metaphysics as we explain his approach to causation.